Well, man, it's great to meet you. I love the album. I've already played it on the show, so I'm looking
Awesome.
forward to getting into it and really kind
Yeah,
of peeling back the layers. So, thank you
for
for
sure.
taking a minute.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm really excited to talk with you.
Absolutely. So, before we get into Overlook, I want to know 5 years ago, this pandemic was changing our lives, throwing musicians into whole different realms. How
Mhm.
did you make it through that pandemic era, and how has it influenced either this recording or the way that you approach music today?
Oh, wow. Man, I feel like during the pandemic, I wrote a lot of music at home. Like it was just because I was kind of by myself a lot of the time. I would work on just like kind of collaborating, just different recording projects with other people like remotely and stuff. Uh, but I remember when things started to kind of open back up just a little bit. I mean, a lot of the restaurants and stuff were just, like closed here in Houston. But there was this one place that I played at quite frequently called Avant Garden, and we would have like a Friday night jazz night, but it was like outside. So people would show up and like wear their masks and stuff, and we would play out on the patio. And so that was like kind of, coming out of the pandemic and even kind of like towards the end of it. There was still some interactions. I think Houston wasn't as close as maybe some other areas of the states, just like kind of living in Texas. But yeah, I feel like kind of, going through that process of like writing a lot of music. A lot of the music that I wrote during the time showed up on the album. So that was a big part of it because I had a lot of time to just kind of think. And then when I got to finally play with these musicians kind of after that, I got to like just kind of workshop the tunes and see what worked and see what didn't. So that was kind of the process for me.
So, talk to me a little bit about Overlook. What was kind of the overarching music vision that you had for this project?
Uh, like for me, it was like a combination of three things. So for me, the album represents first, a sense of home. So I'm originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And when I was growing up as a kid, like there was this park called Shenley Park, which is like kind of overlooking the city. And they had like a skating rink at the top of it. And, as a kid, I would go and take skating lessons and my family would go there. And so for me, it's kind of like a lot of the songs remind me of that place. Um, Another big reason for the album is just all the different types of music I've played over my life. I mean, I grew up playing in church. I grew up kind of playing a little jazz combo starting in middle school and high school up until now. And then I played in like wedding bands, different stuff, like R&B settings, pop settings. And so for me, the whole process of the album is like writing my own music, but then like taking all of these like musical influences, kind of like putting them into a pot, stirring it up together and see what comes out. And what came out was the album. Uh, so I don't know how much of it was like necessarily like intentional as opposed to just like what I was hearing at the time. Um, and then I guess the third like more emotional reason was like I lost my dad when I was a kid. And so the album, a lot of the songs are kind of like oriented, like when I was writing them, are oriented towards processing that grief and kind of coming to an acceptance of that later in life. But those are the three main things that the album is about.
So, is this technically your debut?
Yeah, yeah,
So that's a pretty big deal, especially, in your genre, in jazz, putting it out into the world. How
yeah.
how does it feel? What do you ultimately want the listener to get out of it, and how does it feel on a visceral level to have that calling card out there?
Uh, it feels edifying. I think partly just to know that my music is worth hearing. I feel like growing up in the culture of jazz, it can very much feel like, you have to like do things a certain way. Like when I was growing up, and I was taking lessons, it always felt like, when you're first learning how to play standards and stuff, there's certain like rules and conventions that you have to follow. And then like if you play wrong notes over a chord or over a chord progression, like you won't be accepted at the jam session or whatever. And so like throughout the past, like just kind of growing up, I've like tried to find my own way of playing and kind of not really restricting myself to those things. And also just I wanted to create like a type of jazz that was like accessible to the non-jazz listener. Because sometimes even me like growing up, I always felt like jazz was kind of like an exclusive music, or you had to like know a certain amount of stuff to like appreciate it. Um, and so yeah, it feels really edifying to like kind of put that music out there and not really kind of play the comparison game. And yeah, it feels very honest. It feels very authentic and genuine. And yeah, I couldn't be happier with it, to be honest with you.
So take me back to your beginnings in Philadelphia, the home of Mary Lou Williams. And what were the beginnings? How did you pick up the keys? How did music and jazz kind of evolve into your career right now?
Yeah, so it was Pittsburgh, and yeah, so I grew up. I started playing piano when I was probably like 3 or 4. I took classical piano lessons up until 8th grade, and up until 8th grade, I hadn't really had any like exposure to jazz. In fact, I I played a lot of sports and stuff, and it was between my 8th grade and my 9th grade year, and I wanted to go to this new high school to play football. And let's just say I wasn't a very good football player. I was terrible. And so I went through the summer conditioning and I was told my mom was like, all right, I can't do this. So she made me turn my uniform into the coach and everything. But she's like, you got to continue with something. And, I was good at piano. And so she found this guy. His name is Ron Bickle. And he was a local professor of jazz piano at Duquesne University. And they had this program on Saturdays called the City Music Center. And so every Saturday I would go and study with him. And he kind of like introduced me to jazz and just like kind of how to play. And then I started to go to different jam sessions around town that he would tell me about. And that's where I started to connect with people my own age. I started to learn about the history. Um, there's this one guy, his name is Dr. Nelson Harrison. He was like a pretty well respected figure in the Pittsburgh jazz community. And I remember him uh, sitting me down. He would tell me stories of like when he got to see Bill Evans and Miles Davis and like kind of meet them and like kind of sharing jazz history. And just I kind of got enchanted, by that, and I never looked back. So then kind of doing that, I like gigged with some musicians my age, and then I went to college. I went to the University of Pittsburgh, where I studied jazz. I did a dual major. I actually studied math and I did a jazz studies degree. So I did two things. I got to study with Jerry Allen, which was really, really cool.
Yeah.
And then I got to study with this guy named Frank Cunamundo, who went to high school with Ahmad Jamal. So that was really, really cool. And I got to go to see Ahmad Jamal live and him and Frank, and that was like really like mind blowing for me. Like we would sit down in our lessons and he would be like, "This is how Ahmad plays it. Here's how I play it." And just like getting that firsthand knowledge, I was like, wow, like not a lot of people get this.
Yeah.
And so just kind of from there it took off. Yeah.
But early on, what were some albums, who were some players that you were looking up to and emulating
Uh,
to find your voice?
oh yeah. I mean, it really kind of was all over the place. I mean, at first it was a lot of Oscar Peterson. I really love Oscar Peterson there. And then I really love Monty Alexander. There's this one album, Live in Tokyo, the
Yeah.
Monty Alexander Trio. Oh my gosh, that's probably one of my all-time favorite albums.
Yeah.
Um, and then Ahmad Jamal, obviously, just like kind of from Pittsburgh. Errol Garner, I really got into him. And what I would used to do is there was this old club called the Crawford Grill, and so like sometimes like I would drive through Pittsburgh and like listen to these albums while I was driving through the neighborhoods where like the people played. And so there like is a certain connection to that. And then Art Blakey as well. Like I grew up listening to him and Roger Humphreys, the drummer with Stanley Turrentine. He still plays around Pittsburgh and he had like a weekly jam session. And so I would go and listen to him and listen to those albums too. So it was very much like that hard bop kind of stuff. And then kind of come into middle school and high school, I started to look at more of the modern stuff, like I went through the whole Robert Glasper period, as I feel like a lot of pianists my age do. Um, and then like more modern stuff, Aaron Parks, I'm a really big fan of him, Taylor Steve, kind of that stuff. So it's kind of conglomeration. And then a lot of organ trio stuff too. So I don't really feature a whole lot of that on the album, but I also play Hammond organ and I grew up listening to like Jimmy Smith and Joey DiFrancesco and that stuff too. So yeah, it's kind of all over the place for me.
So is Ahmad's from Pittsburgh?
Hmm. Yeah.
Okay, okay. I just wanted to make sure. I was just kind of taking a look into it because there was a double album, I think live in Chicago that I have on vinyl that's just
Yeah.
really, really good. Um,
Oh,
yeah. So
yeah.
anytime you can get him in the live element, I think those older cats, when you can capture recordings of them live where they don't feel the pressure of the studio and the energy and buzz of the crowd, it's just makes it that much better.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. Yeah. And like it was interesting like hearing his old recordings versus like seeing him live. He kind of like his a lot of his like early stuff was pretty dialed in, like in terms of his trio arrangements. He had different hand signals and stuff,
Yeah.
and used a lot of space. But like when I saw him when he was older, he kind of went more of that like atonal route. It was clear he was like in some sort of study of some zone.
Yeah.
So that was cool.
That is cool. So, what was the first live jazz show that you saw that absolutely blew you away or made you think, I want to be on that stage one day?
I remember the first one, so I remember it was probably the first jazz show I ever saw. So my youth pastor, I guess what really got me into it. So, um, my youth pastor at my church, he asked my mom if he could take me to a jazz club, and she said, yeah. And so I go to this club. I'd never been to one before, like, and I just remember seeing this band. Uh, I think it was Thomas Went on drums, Dwayne Dolphin on bass, and I think it was Lou Stallute on saxophone. They're all like guys who are still playing in the Pittsburgh jazz scene. And I just remember sitting there looking at it and being like, they're not reading music. Like, how do they know what to do?
Yeah.
Like, and I could not get over that question. It was like kind of this like, I made it my life goal to like figure out how to do what they did because like it just blew my mind.
So the beauty of getting into this world of jazz is that you have this dream of what you're going to do with your career,
Yeah.
stages and people you're going to play with. What's been the difference between you having this dream of being a jazz musician? Now you have your debut album, you're playing
Mhm.
shows, you're in a new city. What's the
Yeah.
difference between the dream and the reality of this jazz career that you're embarking on?
Um, that's interesting. I feel like I've had to like kind of redefine what success is. I think like when I grew up, I kind of had this vision that, if I wanted to be like a great jazz musician, I had to like get like a certain type of gig. I had to like play at a certain type of place. And maybe part of that is true, but I think for me, less so now. I remember when I was in college, one experience that I had, I was playing with that Dwayne Dolphin bass player I told you about, and he actually went on the road with James Brown for a little bit, and he we were playing some gig, and he's like, "Hey, can I talk to you for a second?" And I'm like, "Oh gosh, I messed up. What do I do?" And he's just like, "Hey, you got to remember, like, uh, whatever you play, like, always play for the people that you're in. It doesn't matter what the gig is, just play for the room and serve the music, you know?" And so I'm trying to define my success more along those lines of just like whether it's a big stage, whether it's like just a small jazz club, it's just more about just being present and really kind of like being a vessel for the music, which means I have to be rooted in the study of it, but not get too lost in like all the mechanics of it all the time.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that really answers your question, but
No, it does.
that's how I view it. It's more of just like it's not about prestige. It's just about enjoying music because sometimes it can feel like, especially now in this Instagram and social media culture, everyone's posting all these videos of like, look at this gig I'm on or like how killing I am. And I'd rather just be in the room and just enjoy who's ever playing, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So yeah.
So let me ask you this.
Hmm?
What was the first stage that you played on where you were like, I can't believe I'm doing this. I'm on this stage right now. And what is a dream stage for you to get on in the future?
Okay. Yeah. I'll give you one moment. I remember vividly. So it wasn't a jazz gig actually. I was playing with this band. What were they called? They were called Shazam. That's what it was. So it had some jazz elements to it, but it was like kind of more of like a funk, like I don't even know what you would call it, like kind of like a funk, sort of free jazz sort of band. And we were playing this gig in Pittsburgh, and I think that was in like when I was in late high school or early college at some point. And I just remember we were playing some song. It had a pretty like solid set of chord changes, pretty conventional. But I got to this point where it was my solo where I allowed myself to like free my mind. And I wasn't thinking about chord changes. I wasn't thinking about anything. And it was like for the first time I was like watching myself play as opposed to like feeling like I was like having to think through everything. And that was a really life-changing experience for me because that was like some of the best stuff I feel like I've ever played in my life. And I could not tell you to this day what I played.
Yeah.
Uh and yeah, I think for me, like that was an epiphany moment of like, wow, like this is really powerful, and I have to like kind of like let go of myself a little bit in the process of that, and that's honestly been my pursuit ever since I've had that experience at that gig. Um, And I guess in terms of like a lifetime sort of gig to have, I mean, for me, I don't know if it's like a necessarily a particular stage, but my dream goal would be to like take my trio to Europe and just kind of like do a backpacking and get a truck and just kind of like drive to all these different cities and play in a bunch of different jazz clubs and just explore the world and have fun.
Yeah.
I don't know if like playing like a big jazz festival in Europe would be my thing. I mean, I'd probably have a lot of fun doing it, but for me, I really like those intimate settings because I find the larger the stage, the more distance I feel from the audience,
Yeah.
and I thrive on that energy. So being in like a really big stage, I don't know.
Yeah. No, I dig it. Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
What gets you up every day? What do you like the best about being a professional musician? What motivates you to get up to make this music and to pursue this career?
Honestly, because it doesn't really feel like I have a choice. It just feels like a life calling. It's just like ever since I was a kid, it was like there was just certain things that I didn't know how to say or express through words, but I know how to play it. And for me, it's just like a lifestyle. You know, even here in Houston, like I play a lot on the jazz scene and I do different types of gigs. And every time I go, it's just like I'm processing on the gig whatever it was that I was doing that day, whether it was like I was like angry or I was like happy, whatever emotions. It's like a way for me to just live life,
Yeah.
And so that's what kind of keeps me motivated in doing it is it's more of just a being present sort of deal. And obviously like I have certain goals I would like to achieve of like writing different types of music. I'm really into other stuff too, is like writing songs and working with songwriters and exploring those genres, song form, synth stuff. I'm really into that, so just trying to be a well-rounded person, like not even just with music, but just with life.
So what's the scene like in Houston? I know we have a player in Kansas City that was from Houston. His name's Eddie Moore, and he's a keyboard player.
Okay.
He's really big on the scene. But I'm always curious with
Uh-huh.
places aside from like, LA and New York and all of that, Chicago. What's the scene like in your local area in Houston?
Yeah, I mean, there's a pretty good scene. They're actually building a new jazz club here called Doc's. There's a guy, his name's Doc Watkins, who
Yeah.
owns the jazz club in Jazz, Texas. Yeah, so he's opening a branch of that club here in Houston, and it should open
Okay.
up in November, so in a couple weeks. But yeah, I mean, there's a really solid group of musicians here in Houston. Trying to think like Woody Witt is a great sax player. Mark Simmons Sr. He's a really great drummer that I've got the opportunity to play with. He actually plays. He's George Benson's drummer,
Okay.
and
Cool.
so that's been really really cool to kind of like hear stories from him and get some advice and stuff like that. And there's also a really awesome group of like young talent coming out of Houston as well, like Paul Cornish from Houston.
Hmm.
He just put out that album on Blue Note. Jalen Baker, who's on the album, he also does his own stuff and is touring with Jonathan Blake, and so there's a lot of really great musicians and great players, singers, sax players, drummers. Like I feel like the drum thing is definitely big here.
Yeah.
With Chris Dave, and Jamira Williams and Kendrick Scott. There's a big drum tradition. And also the High School for Performing Arts too, where Robert Glasper and pretty much everyone and their mother went to that high school.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So why do you love jazz? Why do you love this art form we call jazz?
Man, it's because it's like a way that you can tell a story. And I really like the Keith Jarrett approach of just like it's just spontaneous composition. It's like it just requires a lot, requires creativity. It requires being a team player. Like when you're on the bandstand, like if I go and just try to do all of my tricks when I'm playing with the bass player and a drummer and I just leave everyone out to dry, it doesn't work. So it requires a lot of like team playing, a lot of empathy in terms of listening to other people. It's a breathing thing. There's a lot of dynamics to it. Uh, yeah, and I just can't see myself, like I think the thing that I struggled with classical music growing up is like I really liked the stuff that I played, but I it was hard to like make it my own because I was playing something that someone else wrote. And so like jazz gives me the opportunity to write stuff that's uniquely mine, but I can also share it in a group context, you know. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, fans, everyone on the bandstand, but you're
Mm.
in control. You run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
That's interesting. I feel like that's just like a continual thing. I think I'm just someone who just wants to get better at music and like continuing self-improvement. I think I've worked a lot to like just believe that my music is worthy of being heard. Like I may not be like the most like fast bebop player in the world, but like just someone who like appreciates good music, who's like present and is just trying to just live life to the fullest that I can.
Yeah. So let's say we get off this call, time machine pulls up in front of your house. You can go anywhere in the history of jazz music and see one show with your own eyes.
Oh, Jesus.
Where are you
God.
going?
Oh man. All right, I'll need to like think about that question for like a week. But the one
Yeah,
that the one that immediately came to mind was the show that I forget what year it was, but it was the show with Jeff Tain Watts, Kenny Kirkland, and Kenny Garrett.
yeah,
That live show. Kenny Kirkland was like one of like I feel like one of the most underrated jazz pianists of all time.
yeah.
He had like that one album with all those great compositions that have really inspired me, in terms of harmony and stuff like that. But yeah, like I go back and watch those videos all the time and just like how much energy there was and just how much fluidity, how much rootedness, how solid everything was. So I mean, there's probably many others, but that's the first one
Sure.
that comes to me.
Well, yeah, you can, in the ensuing days, you can just string together a dream itinerary for sure. Um,
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
so, Overlook is the new album. If anyone wants to grab a copy, if they want to catch you live, any of the other good business in your world, where's the best place to go?
Yeah, I got my website, ben-clifton.com. And then the album's on Apple Music, Spotify, pretty much all the streaming platforms. So if you just look up my name, that's where it'll be.
Okay, I will put links in the show notes. Ben, so great to meet you, man. Again, I love the album, love the
Yeah.
energy. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah,
Awesome. Great talking with
you
you.
bet. Yeah, great talking to you before.